The author of today's story, JGrupe, released a novel on Amazon called Beneath the Asylum. It's about a security guard in an old mental hospital who discovers the sounds of a small girl crying behind a padlocked door in the basement. That sounds like a spooky read. Available both on Kindle and paperback. Links for that will be down in the description.
What if I was in the bedroom and I did something bad? Would the elf see it?
My son's eyes were worried as he looked up at me. Yep, that's how it works. As long as he's in our house, he sees everything you're doing. He's magic, just like Santa. Yikes. In retrospect, the whole thing is creepy and off-putting, especially considering what happened in the weeks following that.
The elf was in my bedroom last night, Daddy.
We were sitting at the breakfast table the next morning. Oh, really? Well, see, just like I told you. He's keeping an eye on you. Kids are always making up stories.
He told me he was watching me real close, and that you and Mom better be good too, because if you aren't, he's gonna be angry.
I just nodded and told Sammy to eat the rest of his cereal and to drink his orange juice. We were going to be late for school. My wife told me 2 days later that she was getting worried about Sammy. He kept talking about the homemade elf we had crafted together as a family, and how it was telling him to do things. But he wouldn't say what. I told her I would talk to him, thinking she meant that he was being told by the elf to be a good boy or something like that. But I should have realized by the look in her eyes that it was something more serious. We were never good at communicating, the two of us. Maybe it was my fault what ended up happening. I spoke with Sammy that night in his bedroom as I was tucking him in, and asked him what he had meant. What did you mean when you told Mommy that the elf tells you to do things? He opened his mouth to speak, then paused and seemed to think about it for a second. His eyes drifted up and he began to play with the fabric of the bed cover self-consciously.
What did he mean? Well, he just said to be good, Daddy. That's all. To do good things.
In retrospect, it was obviously a lie, but I was too distracted by my thoughts of work to pay attention. I only listened to the words and heard what I wanted to hear. Okay, good night, Sammy. Sweet dreams. I was slammed at work for the next few days, and so was my wife. She worked in retail, so she barely saw any of us as it got closer to Christmas. I told her I had talked to our son and everything was okay. He was just trying to be good before Christmas. She told me that didn't sound right. He had been acting very unusual, and she hadn't liked the tone of his voice or the distant look in his eyes. As she said that, I realized he had been increasingly aloof lately. He hadn't been finishing his breakfast or dinner, wasn't asking his usual 10 million questions a minute. He had put on his shirt inside out that morning, and 2 days ago, he put it on backwards. The teacher had called from school to ask if there was any trouble at home. All red flags. And then the following night, I realized something was terribly wrong with him. I was lying in bed with my eyes open, after struggling to sleep for hours, when I noticed movement in the doorway. The darkness was nearly total, but I swear I could see someone crawling on the floor. It was so hard to see, though. My heart pounding, I reached for the bedside lamp, feeling for it with my hands. Trembling, I managed to grab the cord and pull it just as the shadowy figure got up to the bedside. It was barely visible, but I could just make it out. The form of a person crawling around like a wild animal on the floor, moving quickly and erratically. My heart was in my throat as the light turned on, blinding me for a second. I couldn't see anything. Blinking the light away and trying not to panic, I finally managed to see what was happening. Nothing. There was no one in the bedroom but my wife and I. Unable to shake the feeling that I'd seen something, I jumped out of bed and looked underneath, like a kid checking for monsters. Nothing. The image flashed before my eyes again of what I'd just seen moments before. A barely visible silhouette in the pitch-black room. It had looked like someone on the ground on all fours, moving around quietly, like a predator hunting in the night. Someone small, the size of a child. I left our bedroom, heart still pounding, taking a look back at my wife, still snoring in bed. She was sleeping with a face mask to block out the light, so I hadn't woken her up. I went quickly down the hall to Sammy's bedroom and looked inside. My blood turned ice cold. The bed was empty. I heard giggling from down the hall, then screams. My wife let out a blood-curdling howl of agony and sheer horror. Everything went into slow motion, and my legs felt like they were in quicksand as I spun around and tried to hurry back towards the bedroom, towards the sound of something awful. It was like the sound of a side of beef getting taken apart by a butcher, but wetter. Blood was everywhere when I went into the room and saw the image that will haunt me forever. My son was standing on the bed, stabbing my wife again and again with a long chef's knife. His eyes were distant, and he almost looked like he was sleepwalking as he stabbed her through the chest, face, arms, and belly, sporadically and randomly. I realized suddenly why she wasn't fighting back. She was dead. I let out a choked whimper of horrified sadness, and that was when I saw the elf. He was standing on our dresser, cheering Sammy on. He was jumping up and down gleefully, telling him to stab, 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 and to kill, kill, kill. My only son turned to face me.
Did I do good, Daddy? The elf said Mommy was bad. He said she lied to you yesterday when you asked what she bought you for Christmas. He said she needed to be punished.
The elf was looking at me, waiting to hear what I would say to him. Better be careful now, I thought to myself. This elf has a twisted set of morals. What did the elf say about murder, Sammy?
He said it's okay because she lied. People aren't supposed to lie, Daddy.
His eyes were glazed over, and he climbed off the bed and approached me, splattered head to toe in blood and gore.
You never lie, right, Daddy?
He was holding a knife up in the air, pointed end towards me, looking ready to stab again. I try not to.
Good. That's good, Daddy. Come on, Mr. Elf, let's go back to bed.
The little handmade elf that we had crafted together as a family climbed down carefully from on top of the dresser and joined my son at the door. He looked up at me with mischievous eyes made from cut-out construction paper. I don't know how, but that elf has brainwashed my son. He's turning him into something else. His puppet. I'm terrified to speak. Too scared to pick up the phone. What if someone asks me how my wife is doing? What will I say? I need to be really careful not to lie or do anything else naughty. The elf is always watching. If you like the video, please leave a like, subscribe, and press the bell thingy so that you don't miss out on any future stories. This episode will be uploaded to my podcast, the SilverThreads Podcast, available on most popular podcast platforms. All story requests should be submitted to storiesforsilverthreads@gmail.com. Thank you all for listening, and I'll see you next time with another story.